Thank you so much, Yann Ilunga, for being here. I am so excited to be speaking with you today. I've having spoken to you a couple times. I know that this conversation is going to be super valuable, obviously, to everyone listening to it. And I'm just excited for what you're going to be doing for me. So, you want to start by taking just 30 seconds to tell us a little bit about yourself and exactly what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you, first and foremost, Esty. The feeling is definitely mutual. I've also enjoyed every single conversation we have had so far, and I'm thrilled to be here on your show. So thanks for the invitation. 30 seconds sounds good because actually I come from a country where time is really important. I'm originally from Switzerland. People wouldn't guess which part, or maybe you do from my Macroni accent. I come from the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, but I've been living in Helsinki, Finland for over 12 years at the time we're recording this. And very briefly, what I do is, or I wear different hats. I'm a consultant and I work in two spaces. One is podcasting, really at 360 degrees, whether it's hosting or guesting, and then lead generation and prospecting with a focus on organic. So the idea is to help clients find, connect with potential clients or people that can lead to business opportunities. Think about partnerships, for example. And last but not least, I also do speaking, and I've been a podcaster since 2014. And to date, I've published, I think, probably close to 500 episodes.
Wow, what's the name of your podcast?
Which one? Because I've had several. So at the time we are recording this, I'm actually working on a lead generation and prospecting podcast, which I'm really excited about. And I'm also working on two other podcasts that are collaborations with other people. One is with a UX expert, and the other one is with a sales coach. And
Wow.
so those are sort of in the works. As for my own podcasts, I've had different ones. The very first one I launched back at the end of April of 2014 is called the Jazz Spotlight. And that's a podcast that sort of brings together music with a focus on jazz. So I've interviewed a ton of jazz artists, very popular ones too, and the music business side of things. So I've interviewed music industry experts. Then I've had one about business called 360 Entrepreneur. It finished in 2017 after 230 episodes, but it's still available. And most of the content, it's evergreen. And then I've had another show that is all about podcasting, or was, because that's also finished, which was called The Podcaster Lab.
Cool, super cool. I'm curious, just as someone who hosts their own podcast, how do you decide like when to end a podcast, like versus like a thing that you're just going to continue forever doing?
Yep. I think it starts with what's your purpose. I've always been very strategic. So for each podcast, I've had a very strategic reason behind it. And for each one, if we had more time, I could literally walk you through every single podcast and tell you exactly why. But long story short, it's so that I'll pick one of the podcasts as an example. The 360 Entrepreneur, my goal of that podcast was to use it as a tool to grow my professional network. And after a while, after doing that, I think I ran it for about 3 years. I felt as if I became a good enough networker where I didn't necessarily need to sit down with somebody and interview them in order to be able to build a relationship with them, a professional relationship. I became good enough where I could just reach out to people and be able to talk business without necessarily having to interview them, which is something that I did at the start when, I felt as if, okay, I'm nobody and I'm based in Finland. So I'm based in Finland and I work primarily with North America. So I was like, yeah, I don't get many opportunities to network, especially in person. So how do I go around that? And that's where that podcast came into play.
Cool. I love it. I know one of the things that most definitely is not spoken about in podcasting is the benefits of it for the host. Just as much as the audience learns from it, if not more, the host does too. So uh, I started my podcast not only for that, but a big part was for that. But let's go a little bit into LinkedIn, and that's what we're really going to talk about. What got you into LinkedIn, and what is your biggest focus on LinkedIn today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because when I think about it, I don't know whether I would want the LinkedIn expert label attached to me, but I realized that it's the platform that has been working the best. And also when we think about your audience on a sort of universal scale, if we were to pick all the different platforms, LinkedIn is probably the one that would be relevant for most of your listeners and viewers' audience, so or target market. So at the time we're recording this, there is, I think last time I checked, it was something like over 800 million active users worldwide, and people are on the platform to do business, to network. They're not on the platform looking to be entertained, or primarily looking to be entertained, like it may be the case with platforms like Facebook, for example, or Instagram. Not to say that those don't work for business, because they can be great, but I think that especially if you focus or you run a B2B company, LinkedIn is a must. So that's really the reason why I sort of started to use LinkedIn, and then I really focused on LinkedIn. And nowadays, when I work with clients, it's actually the platform I recommend they look into it, because I think for most of the people I work with, it's really an untapped opportunity. It's a gold mine, really.
Tell me, let's just clarify before we get deep into this. What sort of businesses should be on LinkedIn? You mentioned B2B. Any B2C should be on there? That's question number one. And question number two, is there anyone where it is not? Like, what type of industries is it not their ideal audience?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I think that it would be a good platform also for B2C people, B2C companies, because, for example, I'm on LinkedIn, I use it for work, but I may be a customer. So, not as a business person, but just as a person. So for a B2C business, being able to reach me would definitely represent an opportunity. And in terms of your other question, sorry, I'm drawing a blank. You will probably need to do so I'm editing. Do you remind to repeat just the second part of the question?
Yeah, sure. Is there specific industries that like you don't recommend starting on
Oh, right.
LinkedIn?
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. That's a very good question. I think you need to think about very simple terms without overcomplicating this. You need to think about who is your target market. So, for example, if it's retired people, if I think about people like my grandmother, yeah, she's actually on LinkedIn now that I think about it, but she doesn't really use it. So, if I were trying to reach her as a potential customer, it wouldn't be a good idea. I would probably use a platform that her age group is familiar with, which is Facebook.
Right.
So you really want to think about that as simple as that. If you have a younger audience, sure, they may be on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn may not be their preferred channel. Maybe they use it just a few minutes here and there, and they see it more as a CV. Whereas when it comes to B2B, I think most people realize the importance of using LinkedIn in a different way than just a CV where you just put information once and everybody's going to look at it and is going to call you. That's not really going to happen.
Speaking of which, what do you see is the biggest mistake people make on LinkedIn?
Oh, that's very simple. Very simple. And we are all guilty of that. I can raise my hand because I've been guilty of that too. And is to make the profile self-centric. So I make it about myself. And that's sort of counterintuitive. Even on a website about page, that's one of the biggest mistakes, or one of the most recurring mistakes we make. We think it's about page or about me or about us, so it should be about me. But people don't really care about me and my story unless it's in a context that it's A, relevant to them, and B, puts me in a light where they may be like, oh, he's the kind of person that we were thinking about, where we were looking for. So on LinkedIn, oftentimes I see, especially the about section, it's about, I have done this, I have this much years of experience, I've achieved this, but it's like, as a prospect, I don't really care about that initially. It's first about, okay, how can you help me first? And then I'm like, oh, wow, it's impressive. This person has been running a business for 25 years, this. Then those pieces of information reinforce the prospect initial thought of, oh, Esty looks like the right person. From what we're seeing here, we are judging a book by the cover. She looks like the right person. And then additional pieces of information reinforce that and increase also our curiosity. And then we want to learn more about Esty and eventually have her help us with whatever it is that she helps us with.
So essentially, you're saying it's like more like embedded within, it's about the customer, about the person reading it, but you just embed these little pieces of information within what you're saying, within you're relating to them and how you could help them and making a story about them. So that way they like you said, like it reinforces in them. It's like those pieces of evidence that like you're legit.
Yeah, exactly. I can make you a very practical example, a very short one. Just last week, I did a LinkedIn profile audit for a client, and she had a very well written about page where she also sprinkled in some elements that have to do with her personal life. So she's a jazz fan and those kind of things, which I think are nice. The problem is that her about page, or sorry, her about section started with, my name is Yann, I'm a consultant, I do this. And maybe at like 3/4 of the text, it started to talk about the prospect. Whereas my recommendation to her was to tweak a couple of things language-wise, but it was especially about changing the order of things. So first, you want a person that reads that just 1 or 2 sentences to be like, oh, Est is a mind reader. She's exactly mentioning the things we are struggling with. We are trying, the challenges we are trying to overcome, the goals we want to achieve. So then they're like, oh, now she got my attention. I'm curious to learn more about her. But if somebody's like, well, my name is Esti and I do this, and only after maybe 45 words, you say the one thing that makes me go like, oh. So it's just the
You don't even
process
get to
of
the
first.
45th word.
Exactly. First, you want to get people's attention and make them feel as if you know exactly, you're reading their mind. And then you want to tell them a little bit more about yourself, your achievements, your method, and why not, even some things that you enjoy doing in your free time.
Yeah. Speaking of which, this was so helpful. And I think that what we're about to do is going to be even more helpful for people as we go into a deep dive into my LinkedIn. Are you ready for that, Jan?
Oh, I'm absolutely ready. This is
I'm
going
a
to be a
bit
lot of
scared to
fun.
not scared is the wrong word, but like I know I'm going to get roasted here. So, guys, you're watching
Well,
this
I'm
live.
a
I have
good sort
no
of
idea what Jan is going to say.
I'm a good type of roaster. No, I think the important part when I do this job here, it's taking it the right way. I can, if it's okay for you, I can share the example of a client I've done it with. She's
No.
wonderful. She's a coach who works with artists,
Hmm.
and I've done it for her. And she was really so that she obviously here for the sake of time, we're gonna focus on the key areas. But when I do it for clients, it's something definitely longer and more thorough, so to say. But she was really somebody who took the advice to heart and she implemented. And you know what happened? One of the tips I gave her had to do with her headline, which was good. I told her, yeah, if you just tweak a couple of things. A couple of weeks later, she sent me the screenshot of a DM somebody sent her on LinkedIn saying, I came across your LinkedIn profile, your headline struck a chord with me. Then my client told me, I'm going to try to have a call with this person. You know what happened? This person ended up actually purchasing her most expensive coaching package. And it started with the headline that made the person feel like, oh, she knows how I'm feeling. And then
Yeah.
she took it from there.
Amazing. Okay, so let's do this. Do you want to
Alrighty.
pull up? Yeah, we're gonna pull it up so everyone could see. And guys, while Yana is going through my thing, I'm gonna suggest actually that you pull up screens side by side, your screen, your LinkedIn profile while you're watching this video, so you can update things at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. So I have 2 quick questions for you, Esti, that I would encourage everybody to ask themselves. In my analysis, I usually ask a few more, but these I would say are 2 key questions that can really help you. Is it okay if I ask you those questions?
Of course.
Okay. So, and I think I know the answer, but I'm not gonna, I'm gonna stop myself there because I don't want to influence you. So the first question is, who are your prospects, your target clients? Meaning, if anybody in the world would visit your LinkedIn profile, who would you want those people or that person to be?
Um, ADHD entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs with ADHD tendencies. Who already have a successful business, already have like a strong business in place, and they're really looking to optimize their brain. So they know, like, if they optimize their brain, they're a growing person, and they know that a lot of things will be easier from them otherwise.
Okay, so I would have been right just because I cheated. I was looking at your headline, so you're calling them out explicitly. So I kind of thought you would refer to them. Thank you. Second question, if somebody is looking at your LinkedIn profile and they fit the bill of what you just described, what would be the next step you would want them to take?
I have two options. I'm curious to hear your perspective. What do you think is a smarter way to go about it? We could either make the direct, just like send DM and then like get into conversation with them,
Mm-hmm.
or could be to take the cognitive function assessment so they get on the email list.
Yeah. Depending on it depends on your strategy. I would say that the latter that you mentioned would probably be smarter just because they go on your email list, which is an asset that you have more control over compared to LinkedIn, where the platform can decide to change anything about it overnight, pretty much, and we can't do it. And we can do much about it other than either accept it or just live with it. So yeah, thank you. That those two pieces of information is going to be useful as we proceed with the analysis. Okay, so ready?
Let's do it.
All right, so let's start with the elements of the above the fold. What is the above the fold? It's actually what we see here without having to scroll further down. We can start from the visual elements. Let's start with your banner. I like the fact that you mentioned Life Peaks University, so it's very clear. And you also state what it's actually that Life Peaks University helps people with, helping entrepreneurs rewire their brains to be more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. I really like that. If I were to give you a tip in regards to that, would be think about the negative consequences that an entrepreneur may have if they're not efficient. So what are some of the consequences, like the negative consequences especially?
Yeah, if they're not efficient, there's a lot of
Very
procrastination, there's a lot of loss of money, a lot of miscommunication, a lot of just like frustration.
exactly right. So probably thinking about some of those things, for example, loss of money, 10 people out of 10 wouldn't want to lose money. So that may be a negative consequence that stresses the pain even further. But generally, I can tell you, compared to many banners I see, yours, it's very good because oftentimes people don't really leverage that. And from a visual standpoint, my background, by the way, it's in communication. So I pay attention to certain things that not necessarily everybody pays attention to. But from a communication standpoint, the banner, it's the first, if not one of the first things anyways that stands out. So your banner from that perspective does a great job. As I said, if you wanted to tweak it slightly, I would probably think about adding a couple of additional words that stress the pain even further so that people are like, yeah, I definitely don't want to waste money, because efficiency, it's something, for example, where somebody can be like, well, I'm a bit efficient, but it's okay. I'll improve tomorrow. But when somebody thinks, okay, if I'm not efficient, I'm leaving money on the table. Now it starts to become a bit of a different situation. Does it make
So would
sense?
you, yes, that makes sense. What would be like an optional suggestion of a sentence or something that you would say?
That's a good question. So I would probably address the prospect. So I would put, for example, now really making it off the cuff, I would put something like, do you feel as if you're losing money, you're lacking progress, and you're not communicating the way you would want because you're not efficient? And then you could put, so that would be, directly addressing the prospect. And then you could add something like, Life Peaks University helps entrepreneurs rewire their brain to overcome those challenges, something along those lines. So you have the first question, or sorry, the first sentence, which is a question that addresses them and their pain points and really shows them not only, there is a wonderful image from a book, I think it's Demand Side Selling, which basically shows a tree, and you have the leaves and so forth, which is the symptoms. Then we have the trunk, which is the problem. And then we have the roots, which are the causes. So oftentimes we only focus on one, but we should think about all of them.
I love that. As someone who like works on solving those, helps people by solving the root. issue to things. I absolutely love that analogy. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. And final thing about the banner, if you will want people to send you a DM, for example, or to sign up for the test you were talking about, you could move everything you have here on the banner a bit more toward the left. So they would clear some space on the right. And then you could have, for example, let's say in the case of a DM, you could have an arrow pointing down and something that says DM me, or, let's talk, send me a DM, something like that. So to give people the opportunity to take the next step if they want.
And if I'm putting the assessment, it would be long. It would be like, take the assessment to see how strong your thinking skills are.
Yeah, or could be there. You would probably need to think about, a shorter way to say that. Maybe it's like, yeah, take our assessment test, click the link in the below the headline, something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Because obviously the digital real estate we have available here is what it is. So we need to make sure that we have information on it without having this feel completely crowded. But to give a general advice about the headline, I think the idea of a headline is that if somebody only sees, sorry, not the headline, the banner, if somebody sees the banner and doesn't have any other context, doesn't read the headline, doesn't read the about page, or sorry, the about section, they should be able to, at least at a high level, understand who is it that you do, what is it that you do and who you work with at a general level. And yours is already doing that. So it's overall, I think it's a very good banner.
Amazing. Okay. Where are we going to
All
from
righty.
here?
Okay, then we look at the profile picture. The one thing I would say about your profile picture is that it's very good. I like the angle. I like also how, the zoom, the distance from your face. The one thing I would say is that it's slightly, how do you say, like slightly blurred. So you may want to think about, nowadays there are tools that one can use that sort of help with that. And then a general piece of advice for anybody who's here with us, if you want to make your profile picture pop even further, you can consider using a color background that really makes some contrast with the banner. And in this case, with, for example, the blue shirt that ST is wearing in the photo. When you're taking a profile picture, you want to make sure that it looks something like as the one has this here. So you want to be first of all, you want it to be only you in the photo and not you and two other people. And people need to try to guess which person is actually the one the profile is about. You want to be looking at the camera. You want to be smiling. You want to give people the impression of somebody who is approachable first and foremost.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. Then we have the headline. Your headline does a good job because oftentimes your headline can be broken into two parts, and people often have the opposite of what you have. So first, they have what they do or who they are, in your case, brain engineer, and then maybe they add what is it that they do, who they do it with, and so forth. So I would encourage everybody to follow a simple structure. You want to split your headline in a couple of parts. The first part talks about who you help and what you help them with. So in this case, helping ADHD entrepreneurs optimize their brain to run their business with more ease. Then you want to add your position: consultant, business coach, brain engineer, whatever the case may be. And depending on how many characters you have available, you may want to add something else. For example, the client I mentioned earlier, she was mentioned one of the top voices in LinkedIn in regards to art. So she added that. She managed, because of the characters limitation, she checked, she would be able to make that, to have that in there. So she squeezed it in, which is an element that signals authority, because not everybody is labeled as a top voice on LinkedIn. In regards to your headline, ST, I would probably give a similar piece of advice than the one I gave for the banner. So think about what are some of the consequences, some of the pains. If somebody is looking at your profile, they would need your help, but they don't optimize their brain. So like we said earlier, it may be they're losing money, they're like in progress and things like that. So rephrasing this, it could be something like helping ADHD entrepreneurs avoid losing money and wasting time by optimizing their brain to run their business with more ease. Something along those lines. So you wanna, again, stress the pain points of people, like the worst case scenario, which is often what makes people go like, okay, I definitely don't want to be in this situation. Definitely, I don't want to be for much longer.
So specifically use the negative words because I like to stay away from them, but you're saying that it's better. Like instead of saying be more productive, say get rid of avoid procrastination or things like that.
Well, no, be more productive is good, but it's more about, okay, what happens if I'm not more productive? Because wanting to be more productive, it's a vehicle to
make more money.
Right. Exactly, to avoid finding themselves in a situation where they're not making money, things aren't moving forward, and so forth. So it's thinking about, in this case, that's not really the end point or the destination. That's the vehicle that enable us. So the transformation is the key here, and optimizing their brain is the process that helps them undergo that transformation, where they go from not being efficient, therefore they're not making enough money and everything else, to a new scenario where they are efficient and therefore they don't have those challenges anymore, wasting money and everything else that we've discussed.
Amazing.
All right, let's take a quick look at the contact info. And people here may see a ton of different buttons that they may be like, well, I don't have those buttons there. It's because I use different tools that work with LinkedIn. So if you don't see some of these buttons here, it's absolutely normal. Okay, so first and foremost, if anybody who's here with you and I doesn't have anything here in the contact info, you want to change that. You want to, at the very least, have your website and email address or phone number if you use the phone for business. For example, I don't really use it, so I wouldn't add that. One thing that could be added here could be a next step. So if there is a particular page you would want people to visit, maybe it's for the test or it's it's something else, you may want to think about adding it here. But first and foremost, make sure that here people have the information to learn more about you if they want. That's typically your website. And if they want to get a hold of you outside of LinkedIn, they can do that. And in most cases, that will be through adding your email address there.
For website link, do you recommend putting there to put the test?
In your specific case, I wouldn't put it as website link, but I would add it. I think you can add another link. So you could add a second link and name it that, whatever the name is, test or, assignment, productivity test, things like that, assessment, and so forth. So I would have it as a separate thing, because the idea of this is that if somebody wants to learn more about you, they would go here. Whereas with the test, it's not really learning more about you, but it's about having a resource that helps them. So it's slightly two different things.
Amazing.
All righty. Then scrolling down a little bit, and I know time is what it is, so I'll try to be very quick with the about page. Oh, sorry, I always say about page, but it's about section. Earlier, when we were on the above the fold, we would always see these first two sentences. Imagine an ambitious entrepreneur, and this entrepreneur actually experiences, and so forth. So you see, this is exactly what we were talking about earlier. If this started with, hi there, I'm Esti, I'm a brain engineer, and so forth, that wouldn't necessarily catch my interest, trigger my curiosity, because it's all about Esti. But
plus they see the name right on top.
Make this about prospects.
It's like
exactly. As much as I may love your name, I don't think I'll hire you just because your name is nice, or we share the same name, or whatever the case may be. First thing that I would say here is I'm a very quick reader, so I'm just reading through it really quickly. So I'm gonna talk as I read, so people don't think that the video got stuck.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different type of
Yes,
about,
okay,
it's
perfect.
more of a,
Yeah, it has. So what I like about this is that it has elements of storytelling. It takes people on a journey through, through vision. So I imagine, and you start with imagine. So it doesn't get more powerful than that in terms of triggering somebody's imagination. And then at the end, you have the call to action here, the assessment, which I like. The one thing I would encourage you to think about is it's nice to imagine somebody, an ambitious entrepreneur, but it would be even better to imagine myself as that ambitious entrepreneur. Because if I read it like this, you're telling me the story of somebody else, and I need to try to take that story and put it in my context. So I'll give you a very stupid example here. You're talking about not because she does. So you're referring to a she. And I'm a man. So for me already, that's a small, at a psychological level, that's a small thing. But I'm already need to say, to make that adjustment.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, if you told me something, or if this started
You
with
just
something
put it
like,
you, not because you do less, right?
yeah,
And then
or you can even be talking directly to me and say, for example, imagine being an ambitious entrepreneur who has found a way to handle clients, blah, 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 blah. And then when you say, instead of saying this entrepreneur, you could be like, some really directly the person be like, yes, I'm talking to you. You being the entrepreneur that actually experiences the freedom and so forth. So now I don't need at a psychological level, at a neurological level, at a communicational standpoint. I don't need to take this and try to make it fit into my context, because you already done that for me through the way you have changed. So the content, I think it's good, but it's even better if you were talking to me that
amazing.
explicitly. And then the one thing I would add is that if I scroll back up, as we saw, is the first two sentences that we see. So try to think about if somebody were to read, like we said earlier for the banner, similar thing. If somebody were to land on your profile and they start from the about, they read those two sentences, would they get the feeling of, oh, Esti is really reading my mind? Or would they feel like, oh, okay, this is somebody talking about themselves and how great they and their business are? You want to make sure that if somebody were to read only the first two sentences, the first sentence would be ideal, but sometimes it's challenging. So think about the first two sentences, the first three, really make a person feel like you understand them. And how is the best way to do that is to actually explicitly talk about their pain points, the things that they really want to stay away from. And it's not about scaring people, but it's about making them realize that, hey, I get it. This is something that is probably getting on your nerves, that keeps you up at night, that it's annoying you, that you really wouldn't want to be around for much longer. When you have that happen, people are going to be eager to scroll down and probably go like, yeah, I'm going to skim. Okay, here's the call to action. I'm going to take action, because those first two sentences really struck a chord with me.
So being this scenario, if I were to keep this about page and make the adjustments that you said, what would you change in the first two sentences to really talk about the pain? Because if you notice, like I said earlier, talking about the positive, because that's what I like to focus on. So
Yeah.
how would I stick that in?
And the positive from this interview, I may come across as somebody who's like really focusing on the negatives, and I'm not. I'm a really positive person. But
Yes,
if you think
I
about
can
it,
affirm that from speaking to Yann.
but if you think about it, when it comes to things like changing a habit, for example, we don't change a habit because we're doing something well. We're changing the habit because we are not doing something in a great way, whether we are doing it horribly and we want to change it and be able to do it decently, or we are doing it okay and we want to really master whatever the habit is. So that's why I think it's important to focus on those, just to make people understand, or make people feel that you're understanding what they're facing. And so I'm not saying that, the about section should be about scaring people. No, it's just about, hey, I get it. You're facing these challenges and they can be intimidating, scary, annoying, frustrating, create anxiety. I get it. And then it starts. So in your case, I would basically, because it starts with imagine an ambitious entrepreneur who has found a way to handle clients and so forth. So you're talking about the ideal scenario, right? So an entrepreneur who is able to do all those things. So that's basically the second part of our message. The first part could be about, like we said earlier, for the headline or for the banner. So it could be, again, talking to the person directly, and you can do this in different ways. You can talk about them directly. Say, for example, if you're reading this, you're probably, let's say, if you're reading this, you probably feel frustrated because your lack of efficiency has led you to loss of money and all the other things that we've talked about earlier. Then you could say, now imagine being an ambitious entrepreneur who found, so basically you're saying, if you're reading this, you're in this situation, which is not necessarily a great situation. And then you say, now imagine getting to the destination, which is being able to handle clients, run operations, and market, and do everything with this in an enjoyable way. So that's how I would think about imagine that sentence as the second sentence, but I would add a first one that basically would be the sentence that makes the person feel, okay, she gets what I'm struggling with. And then you tell them, hey, not only I understand what you're struggling with, but I also understand where you would like to get to, which is being able to run your business in all its facets with ease, enjoying that. And then you have the rest of the about.
Amazing. Ooh, I love that so much. Thank you so much, Yann. I like how you're able to I mean, obviously I'm sure there are some people watching this that need to redo the whole thing, but I like how you could take something good and make it even better. And I'm sure that if I once I make those changes and I were to come back to you and get a full audit or something, you're gonna make it even better, right? It's always these little tweaks, right? Like small hinges move big doors because these little tweaks always move things even more. Is there anything else specific that is standing out that you think people should know about, whether on this profile or just remember to keep in mind while they work on optimizing their profile?
Yeah, absolutely. I would add a quick comment to what you just said, to say that look at your LinkedIn profile or also your website as a dynamic thing, something that it's never really finished. I'm not saying that you need to update it every single day, but every now and then, maybe it's once a quarter, two, 3 times per year, try to come back here and see, maybe it's updating your headline, maybe it's updating the banner, updating the photo and things like that. Yeah, there are 2 things I would point out, which is interesting enough. I see that people don't always take advantage of them. And yeah, I actually see one here. So it's perfect. You probably have seen from some profiles that there is a section called featured section. And that's a section where you can add almost anything there. You can add photos, you could add links. What I would encourage you to do is to think about the featured section of your LinkedIn profile as the sort of window of your store, so to say. So what can you put on your feature section? A couple of different things. You could put, if you got, for example, a very nice video testimonial or a written testimonial, you could add that. If you have gotten a particular piece of content that it's sort of like cornerstone, that it's something, let's say it's an article that you wrote that it's like, yeah, if somebody reads it, they will be able to do something. Let's say I wrote an article about optimizing your LinkedIn profile. it could be that. Then you can also add a link to your lead magnet. So in your case, the assessment. And if, for example, somebody wants to add, let's say, the link to their scheduling tool or something like that, you could do that. Remember that you can have multiple pieces of content links in the feature section. So once you have uploaded things, make sure that you rearrange the order. For example, I had a client who I did the LinkedIn profile audit for, who had some content on there, but the order in which they had it wasn't logical. So they said, well, I have the content and I have this, and then I have the testimonials at the end because I want people to show what we do. I said, well, if you think about it, it would make more sense to hear from the customer, what is it that you have done, and then have the content that actually shows them what you have done. And then you can have like a link or something like that. So that would be the thing that makes the most sense. Just make sure that you upload the things, that it's complete, and then that you also check the order and think about yourself, okay, how do I want people to navigate the feature section? And then you arrange the order of things accordingly. So that's one thing I would say. So can be used and can be added here on the LinkedIn profile. And then the last one is about content. And there are different ways you can go about content. One is about posting. So you may want to post on a regular basis and start with something that it's doable for you. Maybe it's once a week. You do that, you post once a week, and then you can increase the frequency. And remember that you can also post LinkedIn articles that you can add to a LinkedIn newsletter, which is pretty cool because people can sign up to your LinkedIn newsletter and they get not only notified when you have a new article out, but they actually get the article in their email, which is nice. And one final thing I would add, a tool I literally found out about day before yesterday. So that's how new it was. It's called Clio. The site is Clio, Kleo.so. And basically, once installed, it's a web browser extension. When it's installed, you can click on it and it will do, let's see if it works. It does an analysis, in this case, of Esti's profile. And it shows me all the posts, and I can sort them in different, through different filters. So let's say I want to see what are the posts that have gotten you the most engagement, the most comments. So I click this, and now I see. So this is very good for two things. One is you can learn from others, you can get inspired, and also you can make an assessment of your own content strategy. So you see, for example, you've gotten a few text-only posts that have been the ones that have brought you the most engagement in terms of the number of comments. And you see, there were always questions. So if you and I were working together on your LinkedIn and we were talking about the content strategy side of things, this is probably where we would start. So we would look at, okay, let's see something that you've already done in the past that has worked. And let's see if we can replicate that. Perhaps it's the topic, perhaps it's the format, perhaps it's the fact that it's text only, or that it has an image, or it has video, because you see, you can see different types of, so this one we see it had an image, but you see the most part were like text-based. So in your case, it would probably be a good idea if you're working on or planning content for the weeks and months to come to probably check out this platform, Clio.so. Check here what have been the most interesting posts, and you have also you can sort them out, filter them out, and then use that as the springboard. So you don't need to start from scratch.
That's awesome. I like this. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for this whole dive. This is incredible. Now, tell me, Yann, where can people go to get this full dive on themselves where you actually do a full audit for them, help them figure out what words they need to put in there, and really create a profile that will attract their ideal clients?
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a lot of fun. And we've just scratched the surface, because there are different pieces of the puzzle of a LinkedIn profile. We didn't dissect the content and engagement side of things that much. So there is something to say about comments. There is something to say about recommendations and endorsements and skills. So a lot of more exciting things. If anybody is interested in getting my help with this, and mind you, I don't just do the analysis and then tell you what the findings were, but really I put everything, I compile a document, and then we go over it together in what is really a coaching session where I show you everything, you can ask me questions, and you walk away with a step-by-step blueprint on what to focus on for the next 2 to 3 weeks and what to focus on the next 2 to 3 months. So you really have everything broken down in a digestible and easy to consume way. These are things to focus on, the low-hanging fruits, things you can change quickly, and then things that are a bit more complex, more long-term side of things. If anybody is curious about this, would like to get my help, is curious to check out about some of the clients I've helped with and what they have to say, they can go to yannilunga.com/magnet. The spelling is YANNILUNGA. So yannilunga.com/magnet, MAGNET, magnet. And they'll find the page there for the service. And if you have any questions, you'll be able to contact me through the page, or you find me online pretty much anywhere.
Amazing. And I also highly recommend you connect with Yann on LinkedIn. Amazing. Thank you so much. Final question before I let you go. What is something controversial that you believe in?
Something controversial.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say it's controversial, but I think that a ton of people online really like critical thinking. So when it comes to, for example, wanting to start a business, wanting to start a podcast, wanting to learn, I'm surprised by people who are professional, who are maybe seasoned professionals, but in my assessment, they really like critical thinking.
Wow. Wow, that's an interesting one. What makes you say that?
Well, it's because I've seen it. I used to have a Facebook community with almost 5,000 podcasters and podcast guests. And oftentimes I would see posts there of people who they lack critical thinking. So it's not because I said that by carrying out steps 1, 2, 3, I got this outcome, that if you, Esti, were to carry out the exact same steps, you're going to get the same outcome. We may have in completely different spaces. Maybe I've been doing this for 20 years and you've been doing this for 2 months. So how can you possibly expect to get my same results? And when I see people posting about that, asking questions, and I see that it's people that, by what I see, they seem professionals that have been around for a while, I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of critical thinking.
Or as I like to say, a lack of thinking skills, because you need to use your thinking skills, your cognitive functions to do your critical thinking. So yeah. Oh, I love that.
That's
Thank
true.
you so much, Jan. This was so much fun. I really appreciate you going so deep and sharing so much. And I can't wait to see how everyone's LinkedIn profiles are going to be updated after watching this and after working with you.
Great. Thanks a bunch.
Bye for now.